RTD CEO Debra Johnson, thanks for taking time to talk with us. My first question is about relationships with the state. At the State of the State earlier this month, Governor Jared Polis called out RTD, pushing for, quote, better governance, more budget transparency, and accountability. State lawmakers last year nearly put more oversight on RTD, including overhauling the board makeup. Do you feel like the governor and the state legislature are threatening RTD?
No, I don't think they're threatening. I think basically what they're trying to do is ensure that there is good governance for a vital public service, being transportation delivery for those that reside in the metro region.
The fact that they want more oversight and perhaps overhaul by adding more eyeballs to the board, that would take governance away from you, it seems.
Well, I serve as the General Manager and Chief Executive Officer and report to the Board of Directors, which is comprised of 15 individuals that are directly elected by a constituency. By virtue of the RTD Act, they set policy for the agency, and in turn, in my capacity as the General Manager and CEO, implement said policy. So as we talk about governance aspects, I believe that is something that rests with the board holistically from that vantage point.
I want to talk briefly about the firing of RTD Police Chief Joel Fitzgerald. You put him on leave in July, you fired him on September 20th, and repeatedly refused to say why. In early November, we got the separation letter that you signed with the reasons why. One was because an investigation found he drove 100 miles an hour or more 23 times in a work car, and another that he and other top command staff responded to calls without wearing body cameras. Why did you feel that public safety concerns were not the public's right to know?
Recognizing that during the course of that time, there was an investigation that was ongoing. I believe in my capacity as the General Manager and CEO, I have a fiduciary responsibility to minimize risk and exposure to the agency. Recognizing that there was an ongoing investigation, I had yet to know the facts, and I believe it would have been derelict of my duties to start offering opinions, perceptions, and attitudes relative to what was ongoing in the midst of an investigation that was active.
And what about from the time frame from the firing and the letter that you signed on September 20th to when we got the resignation letter or termination letter, I think November 5th, 4th or 5th? Between that time, you still wouldn't say why.
As relates to minimizing risk and exposure to the enterprise, working in conjunction with legal counsel, it was in the interest of the agency at that time, once again, to ensure that we were doing our due diligence to minimize the exposure to the agency.
Is that corporate talk for you, or worried that you might get sued if you said something?
I wouldn't say it's corporate talk. I speak like this. So once again, in my role, I was minimizing risk and exposure to the Regional Transportation District.
Were you worried about getting sued if you said something?
Once again, worried about getting sued. For all intents and purposes, public agencies get sued often. It's par for the course. And if I basically limited myself by being consumed with lawsuits, that would basically hamstring me from doing my job. What I am sharing with you is that in the course of me being the Chief Executive Officer, I have that responsibility to protect the agency's fiscal integrity. And so with that, it would have been not prudent for me to speak about a matter in which I was not prepared to delve deeper in, recognizing where the organization sat at the time.
Okay. According to a peace officer database, you fired a police commander last month. Why?
So as it relates to police commander, I believe as it relates to me being the leader of this organization, I didn't directly fire any individual, but from my understanding, there was a policy violation.
Anything to do with public safety, similar to what I described from the police chief?
Not at all relative to public safety.
You're the head of a public agency that receives public tax dollars and grant money. What do you believe is information that is private and is not the public's right to know?
As it relates to what is private and what is public, I would say, if anything, as we go forward, when there's impending investigations where the agency has yet to know all the facts and circumstances, I think it's prudent upon the agency to ensure that there is a fair and impartial investigation, be they employment matters, be they incidents relative to service delivery, if there's a disruption in service caused by an accident or things of the like. The public is entitled to receive factual information, and absence of that, putting forward information that has not been corroborated or substantiated would not be responsible practice of the agency as a whole and of me as the Chief Executive Officer.
We're going to shift to an area of my expertise, which is the light rail slowdowns. The 10 mile per hour slowdown zones started this summer, and they're still ongoing. Some of the rail lines by Park Meadows and through the DTC, those have been repaired. By DU and on lines in Englewood and Aurora, they still have slow zones. You told me last year that track inspections have been done on a quarterly basis. Did track inspections before this summer miss all of this rail damage?
I wouldn't say that they missed all the rail damage. I think, if anything, what we're trying to do is ensure that we have our assets in a state of good repair, and recognizing that our rail is aging. Just as any transit agency across this country, we're sort of the babies in the group, but this is commonplace when there is maybe some kind of undulation or a rail burn, which is equivalent to like a scuff on the rail. We want to ensure that it's as smooth as possible, and recognizing that not just relying on mechanical devices to inspect rail, but actually having individuals within our maintenance of way walk the track. We have a greater emphasis on those elements to ensure that we can be preventative in the aspect of maintaining our assets in a state of good repair. So as it relates to the slow zones that are currently ongoing, I'd be remiss in not factoring in that we have exposed rail that is subject to seasons. Oftentimes when rail is in heat, it contracts and expands. And recognizing that we have had some weather that have been less than optimal in reference to doing track inspections, the work has taken longer than anticipated. And in the interest of full disclosure, our third-party contractor who is using what we call a grinder had some impacts relative to it failing, and we had to get a new grinder. So these are all factors that have contributed. I believe as we go forward, recognizing that the slow speed zones are being minimized in reference to next week, for instance, on the E&H light rail lines, we are going to have 72 hours of continuous work there. We are optimistic that we could have those slow zones lifted, but once again, it is up to the weather and other factors as we go forward.
And that means there's no light rail service for those 3 days?
Yes, we will have bus bridges.
Quick segue to what I heard you tell the Denver City Council earlier this week, is that you were on the rail system before and needed to use a bus bridge because of an issue. So between that, light rail trains that still don't show up when they're supposed to, that's one complaint, and buses that are late, why should someone ride your system if they rely on getting somewhere on time?
They should ride our system basically because we provide access to a myriad of different activity sites. I just like to throw out an analogy. It's on par with somebody driving a car, for instance, right? You can have different issues with your car as it ages. And one thing about RTD is that our network is aging. While it's still young, we're not a legacy system and we haven't been around for 100+ years. We still have to ensure that our assets are in a state of good repair, whether it's good, bad, or indifferent. We had deferred maintenance up to $290 million just a couple of years ago. And so it has been my intention, with the support of the board of directors and my colleagues that comprise the workforce, to hone in on that as we have our strategic initiative of Back to Basics. And before it gets better, we're going to encounter some pain points. One thing's for certain is that we have learned from this summer. I believe we had an opportunity to engage on that front. And I assume responsibility in the sense that this is something new for this region. While I made reference to legacy systems that may have slow speed orders that are commonplace, this is new because our infrastructure is aging. And so with that lesson, we have ensured going forward, as we talk about the work that's planned for the E&H lines next week, to do a robust engagement campaign. We will have representatives of RTD, known as our impact team, at key locations. We have ensured that we will have a bus bridge to help move people to and fro, to minimize the aspect of that pain that comes with us trying to get ourselves in a state of good repair.
You talk about 290 million in backlog? Is that what the number is?
It was past tense.
Does that mean previous management of RTD missed stuff along the way?
I wouldn't say that things were missed. I was not here, so I wouldn't conjecture and speculate. What I'm saying is that there were decisions that were made. Perhaps there was something more critical that my predecessors felt was paramount at that time. Recognizing I'm currently sitting in the seat, somebody could look back and say, oh, she should have done that. What I'm sharing with you is that there was $290 million in backlog as related to some asset management. What I'm sharing is that we are looking at that and we have a laser-like focus. It's part of the strategic initiatives that we're focusing on in 2025, being Back to Basics, People Power, Welcoming Transit Environment, and Customer and Community Connections.
Only 5% of RTD's budget relies on fares collected from passengers. So what's the incentive to make RTD reliable for passengers if their money is not what keeps the buses and trains moving?
Well, one thing's for certain, you could look at any transit agency across this country. Public transit service is highly subsidized. And when we talk about the fare box recovery ratio, we are utilizing taxpayer dollars. That's one large portion of our revenue source, i.e. 70% comes from sales and use tax, the other 20% comes from federal dollars, primarily formulaic and some discretionary grants, and 5% rounds out with the fare box. So recognizing that there is monies that are generated from the public to fund the system, for all intents and purposes, there are a multitude of reasons, and I could speculate that we could have good environmental citizens that want to reduce greenhouse gases. There could be other personal reasons that they want to arrive at a destination not heavily stressed out by road rage, or perhaps they want some self-time in reference to reading a book or listening to a podcast.
Are you concerned about the new administration in Washington, D.C., about any of those grant and federal funds you get?
So as it relates to where we sit right now, sure, we have the Trump-Vance administration at this juncture with just 4 days in. As it relates to concerns, I can't say that they're top of mind right now. Recognizing the Secretary of Transportation, I haven't seen the news, has not been confirmed as of yet. There is yet to be a federal transit administrator named. I think we have capable people in Washington. We have the executive director of the Federal Transit Administration that has been in his post. I believe that public transportation is the great societal equalizer. It is an economic generator for metropolitan areas. And so as it relates to moving people to and fro, we are still laser focused on doing just that.
That same Denver City Council meeting I referenced earlier, that there was a conversation about access on demand versus assessor ride. You told that council that the cost of access on demand is becoming unsustainable at $1 million a month compared to assessor ride. Users prefer access on demand, so why not just fully back access on demand instead?
Well, there's a couple of things. There are some nuances there. So Access-a-Ride is RTD's, American with Disability Acts of 1990, mandatory paratransit service. Access on Demand is a supplemental premium service, recognizing that people with disabilities, for all intents and purposes, disabilities come in different areas. And to say that we would use Access on Demand solely, we would be excluding customer segments, because Access on Demand, recognizing that we use third parties, some are TNCs, being transportation network companies, some are taxi cab companies. They may not have what we refer to in the industry of WAVEs, which are wheelchair accessible vehicles. We would be blatantly discriminating against a customer segment.
So Accessoride does not just simply check a box. That's why you have to do it versus focusing on, could you get Access on Demand people, TNCs and other suppliers to have wheelchair accessible vehicles and then do away with Accessoride?
So one thing's for certain, when we talk about privatization, we're talking about transportation network companies. RTD, as a recipient of federal dollars, has an obligation, but more than that, we as an agency have values, and we're committed to equitable transit services for all. So it's not as simply put that we would do away with something. We want to ensure that we have a complement of mobility options that serve the needs of all customers.
Okay. My last question. Did you happen to see my race against the light rail train? It was when we talked last.
I remember this.
I just want to know what you thought of my running.
Did you win?
I won. It was close. I would have beat the light rail to the station in the amount of distance I went by, I don't know, I think it was like 30 seconds to a minute. Thank you.